Hey producers, how's it going? I'm Josh Letitia and I'm back with another tutorial. It's been quite a while since I've done a tutorial because I've mainly been focusing on making music and DJing. But I finished a track called 4 a few weeks ago and the bass line in it is quite cool. It's like a future house track. So I'm going to show you how I made the bass. I didn't really make it so much as just to like layering 3 sounds together. So I'm going to go into that. First things first, if you haven't listened to my track 4, you can check it out on my YouTube channel or my SoundCloud. Yeah, it works quite well with the clubs, and I've got a mashup coming out with a popular a cappella, so you can also play that in the club. I'll probably release that in the next few days, so look out for that. Okay, so the bass line I'm going to be showing you in the full track is this. Right, so you get the idea. It's made up of 3 basses. I'll just solo the bass so you can hear that. It's quite heavily sidechained as well. Right, so the main beef of the sound, which is kind of like a sub bass as well as a low to mid bass, is this one. And that is actually a Nexus preset, which I've tweaked a little bit. So that's bass, or BA, FM Bass 4. And that's from the Deep House expansion pack. I literally clicked on that one and thought it sounded pretty cool. So I went into the mix and just played around with the layering, because I don't know if you guys know, but in Nexus you've got like the preset, but then the preset's also made up of various layers that you can increase the volume, decrease the volume, switch off, adjust the pitch. You can do a few things like that with Nexus, so it's not just presets. So yeah, I started off with that, and I removed some of, actually the first thing I did is I added some bit reduction, just to give it a little bit of crisp. It's very, very subtle though. Then we've got some EQ here. So what this EQ is doing is basically cutting off everything above around 3.5k, because we want to save that room. Not that there's a lot going on up there. We want to save that room for the mid and the high. And I've also cut the sides around 264 to be exact, because #science. No, I'm just joking. I just go with the way it feels, really. So that's that, and then I've got Kickstart. Now this is a free plugin, and I can't recommend this enough. Nicky Romero Kickstart. You've got various presets that almost automate the volume. Yeah, it's a free plugin. You should definitely check it out. It's a lot easier and quicker than doing sidechain compression. It's the same idea. Yeah, just definitely check that one out. Next I've got is a compressor, just to catch some peaks, really. So it's got a short attack. The ratio I've kept the same. Yeah, it's just to catch the peaks. Next we've got FabFilter Pro Q2. Awesome plugin. And what this is doing is, because the track is in C# minor, which is 12A for anybody who's mixing key, I want the kick to be taking up C#1. So I've removed that from the bass a little bit, just minus 1.3 dB with a small Q, with a kind of high Q. And then I've boosted C#2, because that's kind of where I want the bass. I just wanted the kick to be the lowest hit, like the lowest hitting part of the bass down there. So that just it's probably not so noticeable by itself, but it just gels with the kick a little bit better. Next, we've got the mid, which sounds like this. So more of a mid stroke high bass there. And together with the sub or low bass, I think they gel pretty well together. So this one is pitched down 12, so I use the same MIDI, just pitched down. And then in Serum, I've used Vintage Thicky, which I want to say it's from a pack, but I can't remember. So yeah, sorry, I'm not sure which pack that's from. But yeah, it's just this kind of sound. I normally tweak presets a little bit, and then if I'm in the mood for it, I will do some sound design myself as well. But I do like just picking a few sounds that I think are going to work well together and just layering them and doing a bit of tweaking, seeing how it works. So the processing for this one then, I got the Soundtoys Decapitator. This is an awesome plugin, and in fact Soundtoys are just awesome in general. They do some really powerful plugins, and you can get the bundle, which is all their plugins together, for quite a reasonable price, especially if you can get like student discount, which is pretty good as well, so that saves quite a lot of money. But this Decapitator just adds a bit of saturation, a little bit of crisp. I can try doing some A-B for you guys, with and without. So this is with it. Without. Now, that sounds quite subtle, at least on my headphones, but it just adds a little bit of crisp and a bit more character to the sound. Next we've got the EQ, again just cutting some lows, so I've also done a mid-side EQ for this one, just to cut anything out below 190 there, which makes sure that it's not crossing over with the sub bass, so makes sense, and cutting a bit of the high from the mids there. Then the stereo, I've boosted it a tiny bit. Just a bit of stereo width. Also got Kickstart again. Now, some people will probably be saying, why have you got sidechain? Because each of the three layers have got three different sidechains. And if I open up this one as well, that's at 80%. And it's using a slightly different curve. I'm like using my finger to point on the screen, but I realize you guys can't see. Yeah, so and the reason for that is basically the main or the sub to low bass needs to be well out of the way of the kick, so it's a bit harder sidechained, whereas this one we're not so fussed if it kind of interacts with the kick a little bit more. So yeah, don't feel you have to just put a sidechain on the group, the bass, and that's what needs to be done, because you can just play around with it. It's totally up to you. Then we've got an audio effect rack, which has got the Valhalla room, which is my favorite reverb. It's like super awesome compared to the Ableton one. So any kind of lead or main sound, I'd use the Valhalla reverb. Whereas like tiny little elements, you can get away with using Ableton reverb. A lot of people probably wouldn't notice the difference, but if you've got it, then definitely use it. So that's at 100%, no it's not, it's at 17.1% mix with quite a short decay. I'll just play with and without the audio effect rack. So the reverb and the delay, which I'll get to in a sec, is just making the sound a little bit bigger. It's less in your face, and Actually, there is a little bit of reverb on the low bass, but the mix is even lower. Same thing again, like I just mentioned with the sidechain. You can have like 3 separate reverbs for your 3 individual layers, because sometimes you want more reverb on certain elements of the bass. So you shouldn't feel like you have to just put it on the group and be done with it. You can play around with it. It's the thing with producing, you can just do what you want as long as it sounds good. There's no rules. Then we've got some echo. Echo Boy, another Soundtoys plugin. Can't recommend it enough. You just got so much more control than with like the delays and echoes on Ableton or Logic or whatever DAW you use. Right, so that's the mid bass, and then the high bass. If I listen to it by itself, whoops. So that's super high. There's nothing in the mids really. It's just 1K plus. And once again, that's another Serum preset. Held-ons. I've just realized, I think these are all Cymatics, like Future House presets, but I started the track on my laptop, which has the presets, whereas this is my main computer and it doesn't have the presets, so it can't like find them in the menu, so I'm not going to go searching. But yeah, I would have just done a little bit of tweaking on the waveforms or the detune or just something so it sounds slightly different, just so it gels better with the bass or the rest of the layers. Again, a little bit more Decapitator. I use the E setting because it's the brightest. It just gives it a little bit more crisp and character. It's all very subtle, but when you do it a lot with loads of different elements, it kind of makes a huge difference. And then the EQ. Once again, I like using mid-side EQ because you want to treat the mids and the sides differently to give it a better stereo width. So what did it sound like without the EQ? Let me just... This is without the EQ. So it just cuts out a little bit lower than 1K because I think it would have clashed with the mid bass. And then we got Kickstart again. This one's mix of the sidechain is a little bit less because there's no bass, so it doesn't really need to sidechain with the kick so much because it doesn't need to get out of the way for the kick as much as the other two. And then pretty much the same again. Got the Valhalla Room. Not as much decay. A little bit more mix though. So I'll A/B without, without then with. So yeah, I like using the audio effects racks because that way you can get some reverb, and then if you use 100% mix, there we go, 100% mix on the Echo Boy, it just gets cleaner sound rather than duplicating the sound. So those are the 3 basses. So together, I've played them together. Which is pretty cool. And then I've got a little bit of processing on the group here. So I've actually got a house-based chain, which I've used in my other track called Journey. And it's got a filter for filtering in like build-ups and transitions and things. Pro Q, just cutting out the sides for around 250 Hertz. So you don't get phasing issues. Then it's got Ozone 5, which, just close that. Stereo imaging, just to keep everything in mono there. And second band, just lower the stereo image a little bit and boost it towards the high end. Just so that way when somebody's listening to headphones or a stereo system, it sounds a bit more interesting. Then we've got the secret weapon, the Oxford Inflator, which I haven't found anywhere online that actually says how it works or what it does exactly, but it tends to increase the volume of a sound without actually increasing the volume on the meters. So if it needs a little bit more presence or a bit more punch in the mix, you can put this on it and it will like just increase the volume and presence in the mix, but it won't actually increase the volume. So it's kind of witchcraft here. I learnt about it from the Hyperbits masterclass, which I'd highly recommend, because there's just some secret samples, secret plugins, just some kind of cool techniques that can take your sound design, sound music making just to the next level, really. If you think you're getting quite good at music production and you think, I just need to know how to take it to that very next level, then I'd recommend going on that. Because it goes it's not a beginner course or anything, it's quite advanced, but it's awesome. Then I've got utility, which I don't believe it's doing anything. It's just there for if I want to do some automation, which I haven't automated in this particular track. One very last quick thing that I've done in this is create reverse basses. So if I solo this, it just kind of adds a little bit of interest to the track, and all that is just the first note of the bass bounced down and then reversed, and it just kind of like swoops up into the bass and adds a bit of interest, and it's good for transitioning as well. If you ever want to bring in an element and not make it sound weird, or if it does sound weird, then definitely do some reversing and just bring it in slowly. It can work quite well. So yeah, that's the bass from my track 4. If you like the bass, then definitely go ahead and listen to the track. It's got vocal chops and stuff in it as well. And I might do some more tutorials on how I did vocal chops, because they seem to be quite a popular thing at the moment. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, and if you like this video, subscribe, because I'm definitely going to be doing more tutorials in 2017, along with some vlogs and other stuff. But seeing as it's the 24th of December, for those watching today or tomorrow, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.